Thanks for joining today's webinar. This is the final one of the 4 webinar series that we had scheduled for the early part of 2025. Today, we'll be speaking about how project managers can fundraise for their projects. The idea here is that we would like to equip project managers with fundraising skills. Before I actually dive into the presentation, there are a few housekeeping announcement that I would like to make. The first one is that the webinar is going to be recorded. John Robertson is recording the webinar, and it will be available for those colleagues who are not able to join today, or for you if you want to have a look at it later again. Also, there is a question and answer session scheduled toward the end of this webinar, but I would encourage you to type away your questions as you have them. Please use the chat button, which is at the very top left of the screen. You can use that to type your question, and we'll be answering them from time to time as we go through the webinar today. If you're not speaking, please mute yourself. I think John Robertson could also mute all. That is one way of doing it. But if you're not speaking, please mute yourself so that way you have a better quality sound coming from our system to yours. While the webinar is planned for a whole of 90 minutes, we may not need the whole of 90 minutes depending on the number of questions that people ask. But those are a few things that I wanted to highlight. In terms of the agenda, we'll first do an introduction and speak about why we are now embarking on this journey of working with the project managers to equip them with fundraising skills. And we'll then also speak about the fundraising basics. So any one of you who have projects as project managers or deputy project managers, or you have volunteers or involved with projects in any way, shape, or form, this should be beneficial to you. We'll also speak about the donor types, so to what type of donors are out there that you could actually reach out to and benefit from their giving. We have also provided a list of databases and resources of donations, and we'll then close with about on collaboration with ROX as to how ROX could potentially assist project managers in this whole journey. So first thing first, we are going into the introduction. Just so you're aware, I think probably this is not news to you. Traditionally, ROX's projects, or the projects that have been registered with ROX by Rotarians in Australia, have been supported by the Rotarians in their network. And unfortunately, as we are all aware, the number of Rotarians and the number of clubs in Australia are declining and decreasing, and therefore this actually warrants that we look elsewhere to bring in financial support to support your projects. So while the core of our support will always remain Rotary and the Rotary network, we believe that it's time to diversify the sources of support to come and assist your projects. Therefore, we have actually embarked on a journey about a year ago to develop a new fundraising plan. The new fundraising plan said that in addition to working with Rotarians in Australia and their network to get funding and support to support your Rotary projects through ROX, we will be going to non-Rotary sources, being government, the philanthropic sector, the corporate sector, and others to bring in financial resources to support these projects. So that's a bit of a history as to why this type of work that we are doing now in fundraising is required, because we are diversifying or trying to diversify the sources of funding. The help that ROX wants to provide in this process is twofold. We will continuously, from now onwards, be identifying funding opportunities from non-Rotary sources to support your Rotary projects. So that is something that we'll be doing here at ROX with our fundraising manager and myself and potentially other colleagues. So that's one fold. The second fold is that we wanted to equip you, the project managers, and give you the tools and resources so we can amplify the fundraising efforts by 450 times. The reason why I say 450 times is because if we have 450 projects, which we do around, those are the number of projects that we have. In each one of those projects will have a project manager and a deputy or a project manager. And if we can equip those project managers with the resources and the know-how and the technical skills to do fundraising, then it's not only us doing fundraising here in the office for your projects, but also you can do that at your end also. I must also highlight that you are already doing this. You have been doing this all along. So I'd like to acknowledge that and highlight that there's a lot of great work that you've done, but I think these new skills would also potentially assist you to identify non-Rotary sources from which you can get funding. So thank you for doing this work already. It's not new. I'm sure that you have had bits and pieces of done covered already. If they're new, of course, that'd be good for you to add. We have also developed a fundraising guide, which will be provided to you by the end of today in an email. That fundraising guide is a kind of like a small document that provides all the details that we'll be speaking about today in this presentation. So you'll have access to the fundraising guide. Please note that that fundraising guide is only for your eyes only. For the purposes of you using it for your Roxas projects. It's not to be shared outside the organization, outside the ROX as an organization. Also, we will be giving you access to a portal called Grants Hub. We will provide you the login details with the password so you can actually go to the Grants Hub and see the funding opportunities from government, from the philanthropic sector, from the corporate sector. And I'll be actually doing a bit of a walkthrough of the Grants Hub today also in this presentation. But later on, we'll give you your own login details so you can log in yourself and see those opportunities on an ongoing basis. And then finally, I wanted to highlight in this introduction piece that we as an organization are providing service to you Rotarians and to the Rotary clubs and particularly to your projects. And therefore, we have embarked on this new commitment to enhance our value proposition to you Rotarians to deliver more support in terms of project funding, in terms of other areas. So you'll keep seeing more and more value proposition from us as a support to make sure that you're delivering on the project that you're registering with ROX. Now I'll move to the next part, which is the fundraising basics. If there are any questions, I'll pause here and answer them before we proceed. So I'll stop sharing, pause, and answer any questions, and then we'll go again. Any questions? Let me see here. Okay. Webinar recorded. Yeah, are we getting the slide? Yes. Okay. Yes. So we will be providing you the presentation later on. So if you don't want to listen or watch the recording, you can also then just see the presentation at your convenience. Any other questions before we proceed? Yes. Okay. Let me see this. There's a question here. Okay. Been to Grants Hub before, but yes, we do have paid status. Yes. So of course, the Grants Hub access that we'll be providing you is a paid status one. Okay, great. And that is from Penny Voss, who is excited about having paid access to the Grants Hub. Okay, so we'll proceed now. I'll share my screen again. Just give me 1 second. Share screen. We go here, and here we go. Okay, can you see my screen now? Give me thumbs up. Great, fantastic. Okay, I'm trying to proceed now. Okay, in terms of the fundraising basics, there are 7 points that I wanted to highlight. First thing first, when you go through this journey of wanting to get funding from people who are not in your Rotary network, because traditionally, as I said, you've been reaching out to people within your own club or people who know you personally, and probably that's been easy to get support from them for your projects. But now we are working with you to go outside the Rotary family to non-Rotary organizations or to the philanthropic sector, to government, to corporates, and therefore we need to kind of like get more professional with how we present our projects. So one of the very first things that you do in there is develop what they call a case for support. It is a document, usually up to 5 pages long, that actually clearly defines your project, the short-term and long-term goals of your project, what change it will bring, what problem it is going to be solving, and how it will positively impact people or the environment or whatever the subject of that project may be. And also, it is very important for you that when you're speaking about your project and the changes that it will make, the positive changes, that you differentiate between the outcomes and outputs, because sometimes people actually refer to a number of people that they have assisted, or let's say number of containers that been sent overseas, are great success, which in itself is a success. But I think it's also important to highlight what would be the outputs, what would be the actual impact created by that. I can see on my screen John Paskin here, who's doing a great job sending literally tens of containers every year overseas. So while we keep track of the number of containers that have gone overseas, it's also important to say, okay, what good these containers are actually doing in those countries that are receiving them. And we have created what we call a theory of change document that I'll share in the next screen, which you can use to differentiate between outputs and outcomes. So that's your first thing. You need to develop a very well-written case for support for your project, to provide to people outside Rotary if you are seeking their support, their financial support. The second thing is a more concise document, which is referred to as a pitch pack. This is a 1 to 2 pager document that very succinctly and briefly summarizes what your project is about, how it will help people, and what good it will create. And that is what actually you need to be providing to people who do not have a lot of time but could quickly look into your project, and if there's interest, then they can have more discussions with you. I'm sure that you're aware that Belinda been recently reaching out and working with you to collate 1 page project profiles. If not, she'll be in touch soon. So those could also be used to develop your pitch pack, the 1 pager project profile that Belinda is collecting from you. Now, the ROC's theory of change that I just mentioned is what you see on your screen. At the very bottom of the pyramid are the activities that ROC's projects as an organization undertakes. Right. So, for example, we are saying we've been around for 60 years. We have actually delivered more than 5,000 humanitarian projects. We have delivered $500 million in these projects overseas and also in Australia, and that we are providing support in the form of humanitarian aid, benevolent relief, and disaster response, and all that. So those are the activities that are at the very bottom of the pyramid, the wider base of the pyramid, right? Then they actually result in something which is, oh, well, okay, we have now built schools because of our activities, we have built hospitals, we have dug wells, there is now sanitation projects, we have assisted with disease prevention, we have done economic development and things like that, right? Because this is the result of our basic activities that we've been performing, right? Remember, I said that if we are sending containers, there is something that is happening as a result of that. Then the next level in the middle of the pyramid is that it's not about, oh, we have now established 20 hospitals or we have renovated 30 schools. It's actually enhancing infrastructure By doing that, we are returning community dignity, hope. We are creating self-sufficiency in communities, and we are reducing economic dependence. That's the result of that, right? And therefore, as a result of that, then you have quality of life improving for communities where we serve. And at the very top of the pyramid, you see the final goal of this organization, which is ROCS, and all of our projects by virtue of that is that we want to create thriving and resilient communities, right? So therefore, it's very important that you differentiate between the outcomes and outputs, right? If you're going to donors in the philanthropic sector, particularly, they are very, very used to receiving a lot of requests from people. And if you don't know the difference between, oh, what is an outcome and what's an output, then it may not be very successful to get their support and backing. So therefore, it's very important that when you are preparing your case for support and you're developing your pitch pack to donors, whether in the corporate sector, in the philanthropic sector, or government, that you know very clearly that, okay, you're doing this work with, let's say, school in Nepal, but what is that actually doing? How is that actually going to create an impact, a positive impact on the community that is receiving that school? Now, moving forward in terms of fundraising basics, number three, it's very important that you build relationships. One thing as a newcomer, somewhat a newcomer to the Rotary world myself, being here for now about a year and a half or nearly 2 years, is that the Rotary network, the colleagues that I've seen in the Rotary world are very well connected within the Rotary family with each other. And I think we need to do a bit of an effort in order to connect with outside Rotary, with organizations outside Rotary, if we want to keep and get their support. It is very important that you, within your area, your geographic area, you attend networking events, you engage in discussions with other organizations, attend webinars and workshops, and you actually utilize your existing Rotary networks and contacts, so you can actually connect with other organizations, because often Rotarians are also business owners or are connected with the business community or other places. So it's very important that you kind of like get out of your Rotary family to a certain degree and connect with other organizations from which you want to get support. Number four, out of the 7 areas that I wanted to highlight, it is important that you tailor your approach. Every time you are approaching a donor, you tailor your approach based on what they're interested in. In the philanthropic space, it is very well known phenomena that there are foundations who are just focused on one area. They may be, let's say, a family foundation that is focused just on prevention of disease, or there is another foundation that may be just focused on economic development. So therefore, if you're talking to an organization that is a foundation that's focused on economic development, and you're talking to them about preventing disease, a project in preventing disease, then probably that may not fly. So therefore, it's very important that you understand what is that organization about, the giver or the grant maker or the government program, what do they focus on? So therefore, you can actually pitch the right project to them. Just by the fact that you know a giving organization does not mean that that giving organization's objectives are actually aligned with your objectives or the objectives of your project. So therefore, just like when you're in the job seeking world, right? So you have a CV and you always kind of like tailor it to that job opportunity that's available. It's a very similar concept here as well. So you need to actually make sure that you tailor your approach every time you're contacting a new donor. Number 5 is it's also important for donors that you demonstrate accountability and transparency by clearly outlining how your project will be managed, what is the governance structure. One thing I personally love about the projects that are done with ROCS, that there's a very strong governance structure in place. There are project managers such as yourselves. There are Rotarians from your club or from other clubs or from the Rotary family who are involved as volunteers on those projects. They are the people who are going overseas to actually deliver the project. So actually, we have eyes on the ground rather than some other organizations who may be sending money overseas and getting their partner organization to do the work, but they don't have any personal presence there. So I think one thing that we have here, which we need to be really highlighting in our discussions with donors, is to say that, look, it's not only a project that we are funding overseas, but our own Rotarians are traveling overseas to work on those projects and see the result of that. I think last year, if Merv is attending today, he can confirm there were, I think, 673 volunteers who went to work on projects overseas. So that's a large number of people going from Australia to actually experience work on those projects. Leveraging collaboration and partnerships, we are also now doing more of that with ROCS. You'll soon hear that we have entered into a partnership with UNHCR, which is the United Nations High Commission for Refugees. They are an organization that operate overseas almost in every country. So we are partnering with them to give our projects access to their kind of like resources and all that. But that's just one example. We suggest that for your projects, if you want to get more funding, it's good for you to partner with other organizations and combine your forces to go and seek funding, because we have seen that that is something that works very well in terms of getting support. And then finally, on this point, stay informed and adapt. It's very important to be aware of the trends, the best practices, and the changes that happen in the philanthropic landscape. We are also becoming a member of ACFID. You may have heard me speak about that in the last webinar. By becoming a member of ACFID, you as our project managers are part of course, ROCS. So we'll have access to the not-for-profit sector of Australia, particularly those organizations who are working overseas that are of Australian origin. Because when you are in that sector, you get to know as to what are the trends, what's happening, which foundation is now opening their grant round, and what they're focused on, and all the little details that are important in getting success with your fundraising efforts. So that is one of those areas. I'll pause again here and see if there are any questions and answer them before we move forward. Okay. Yes, any questions? I don't see any questions in there.
Yes, I've got a question.
Yes, please go on.
Are we going to get a copy of all this? Because I'm trying to write it all down and finding it very difficult to follow.
Yes, so you'll get a copy of the presentation, and there's also a recording of this webinar that will be available for people to see. So both of those you'll have access to, but also keep in mind one of the main documents that you'll be receiving is the ROCS fundraising guide that we have recently developed. The board has approved that. So we'll be sharing that with you as a guide, which you can refer to, and that will guide your fundraising efforts. So definitely you'll be getting that. Any other questions? Okay, so we'll move forward. If there are no more questions. Yeah, okay, great. I'll share my screen again. Okay. Sorry, give me 1 second. Okay. Now, we speak about donor types. The main ones that are relevant to our cohort, we have I listed them here. Of course, philanthropic foundations sit at the very top of that list. It's important that you are aware of the foundation that operate in your project location or have interest in your project area. You know that for ROCs, we follow the 7 areas of focus for Rotary. As I said previously, there are foundations who may be just focused on one of those areas. Yes, there are foundations who support any type of humanitarian project, whether it's in the health sector, education, environment, arts, culture, social welfare, whatever it may be. But more and more you'll find that philanthropic foundation actually focus on one single area. So therefore, when you are going and identifying philanthropic foundations, and we'll speak about that a bit later as to where you find the list of philanthropic foundations, it is important for you to be aware that they may be focused just in one area. And if your project is not in that area, probably there's no point in contacting them. So it's very important to be aware of that. Another source is private and public ancillary funds, referred to as PAFs or PUAFs. We actually have a list of PAFs and PUAFs, which we are very happy to share with you. In an Excel forum. It's very important, again, for you to be aware that these organizations exist to provide support to the not-for-profit organizations or to the types of project that you're running. So that's another source in addition to the philanthropic foundations. With PAFs, they are usually small family-based organizations. Some of them could be quite large because of the wealthy families that are behind them, but there are also other ones that are public ancillary funds that receive donation and support from a wider range of people, and therefore they could be quite large as well. Another source is corporates. It's very important, again, for you to be aware that most large corporates have what they call corporate social responsibility targets, which means that they want to give some of their profits to community causes, to not-for-profit organizations, and to projects like yours, and therefore to be aware of them, to which ones of them have these corporate social responsibility programs, and which ones actually have their own foundations. That's another source of support for yourselves. Again, we're talking about getting access to sources of funding outside the Rotary family. I acknowledge that you may have done many of these already, but there may be some people amongst you that have not reached out to any sources outside the Rotary family. Number 4, of course, government grants and programs. We have a range of government grant portals that we'll be sharing later today. It's important to be aware of which department within government have programs that may be aligned with your area of focus. One thing that is important to highlight here is that most of the times government programs are just focused on things that are inside Australia. They may not be very interested in doing things that are outside Australia. So if you have projects overseas, you need to be really, really aware as to which one of the government programs actually support things that are overseas. Moving forward, local grant makers, we understand that Rotary clubs across Australia are dialing in today. There may be local corporates or other organizations or family foundations who may be just focused on doing things in your own community and not interested in the statewide programs or Australia-wide programs, or let alone the worldwide programs. So therefore, it's very important to be aware of who are organizations that may exist in your community that could support your projects. And then finally, don't forget that there are Rotary grants available as well from the Rotary Foundation. There are things like district grants, there are disaster response grants, there are global grants, there are CSR grants, and other form of a program of scale grants that are available as well. We have provided a link to the Rotary's website in that document that we'll be sharing, the project fundraising guide document. So you can click on those links and they will take you directly to the various websites that I have been speaking about today, whether those are local grant makers, whether those are corporates or government or others. So that is another area. And again, I'll pause here before I speak about the donor databases and resources, answer any questions if there are any. Okay, going into the chat. Any questions? I don't see any questions in the chat box.
The pack list, is that something that will be included in the package that we're going to get, or do we need to ask for it separately?
So the grant guide that we'll be sharing in PDF, when there are websites mentioned, all of the time they will actually have a link available. So you can click on that and it will take you directly to the website of those organizations or grant hubs. Did that answer your question?
Yes, kind of. You said that there was specifically a list of PAFs and PWAFs.
Yes. So for that, we are very happy to share those with you. They are on our CRM, and I believe I saw John Stockbridge here. I believe we can actually export that into an Excel spreadsheet and share it with people, unless there's another better way of doing that. John Stockbridge, you still there?
Yes, we can. We can put it out. But probably if people want access to the list, we can put it out into a spreadsheet.
Yeah. Yes. So we'll definitely be happy to provide access to the particular PAFs and PUFs.
There's almost 2,000 of them. So a big big spreadsheet.
Exactly. Wow. That's why I've been saying again and again that you need to be really, really specific, because if you are doing an education project and there are 2,000 PAFs, that's just one list, right? And there are all these other grants and all that. If you do not kind of like specify and focus on your own area, you may be sitting there for days and weeks to kind of like identify organizations who could support you.
Perhaps the Excel document can sort to choose the education ones or something.
No, unfortunately, they're not. Sorry, Mahir, they're not. We don't get the list specified by type of interest. So the PAFs just list themselves generally when we paid for access to the list, and then the list is not. It's just the PAFs. They don't say we're interested in education or water projects or anything like that.
Yes. So there is now a new service available by Philanthropy Australia that usually provides the list of PAFs and PUFs, and that new facility can actually also filter out organizations by area of focus, geography, and all that. When we got access to this particular list that we have on our CRM, this was probably 2 or 3 years ago. At the time, Philanthropy Australia was not providing this type of service. Now they do. So we may actually, as an organization, as ROX, go and get access to this new list and import it into our CRM. And if we do that, then we can actually then filter it by area of focus, by geography, by amount, by the time of the year that the new round of funding is open and things like that. So that is something that we could consider as well. We can come back to you on that, Penny.
Thank you very much.
Okay. We have a question from Lori here. It is quite a broad knowledge base out there that requires significant focus and potentially time commitment. Have ROX thought about considering AI to support us in navigating and benefiting this environment? We can certainly do that. As I said, the support that ROX would like to provide in terms of fundraising to project managers is twofold. One is the support that will be provided from this office, where our fundraising manager and myself, to a certain degree, will be working on identifying opportunities by reaching out to government, by reaching out to the philanthropic sector and the corporate sector to identify big ticket support sources to then marry them up with your project. So that's one thing that we'll be doing. But the other thing that we're doing today, that is equipping you project managers with the technical skills, or at least a high level guide at this point in time, to guide you in the right direction to go and look for those opportunities. So yes, we could make use of AI at our end, and you could potentially do that at your end if you have the skills for it. But the idea is that we should be dividing the work between this office and also yourselves as individual project managers, so we can go and amplify our fundraising efforts.
Yeah,
I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, that's probably was the thing, is that I'm not talking about broad AI that we all can use. I'm talking about an AI that would sit on the top of your knowledge base and allow navigation of this knowledge base. Because currently it's at spreadsheets, thousands of entries, different requirements, and you understand that every time we need to find something, it takes time.
Yeah, that's right.
And yes. AI can solve, if it's focused on that base, it can solve that. But it's probably the strategy of further development for Rocks rather than the learning now about grants. But they'll be really useful.
Yes, that's right. Yes, and we'll in a moment we'll actually go and through a process of showing you the various grant portals. So while we are talking about this Excel spreadsheet, which is one of the resources, I think the main resources that would be of most use to you immediately would be things like the Grants Hub, for which we have now a paid subscription, and these other free grant portals that I'll be walking you through now. So that is that. I know that there is a question from John. Let's quickly look into that. Looking for advice to secure non-liability for GST and PNG. We recently had the first project in our plan to rebuild the school and blah was funded global grant. Okay, Rotary. Sure, the school is run by they haven't got don't know how to get the GST exception. So I think that is a question that potentially I'll get Belinda to read and understand and answer later on, because I do not have the answer to that. Belinda, if you could please look at the chat and see that question. We'll come back to that answer later on. So I'll proceed now again by sharing my screen. Okay, so here we are. Now, in terms of a few resources that we wanted to provide you, I hope you can see my screen. Yeah, okay, thumbs up, good. For PAFs and PUFs, as I said, we have a list that we can provide you in Excel spreadsheet, so that's cool. The next one is Grants Hub. We have now a paid version of Grants Hub. We'll provide you login and password details for that, so you can actually log in yourself and see the opportunity there. I'll do a walkthrough of that in a moment also. Then the next one is Grant Connect. This is the Australian grant hub or portal, which is available for free. You do not need to have a paid version to this, and I'll do a bit of a walkthrough of that also. This is available for everyone. You do not need to have any particular login details. So that's called Grant Connect. The other source of support is the Australian Communities Foundation, ACF. They are an organization that you could register your projects with, and they have a large number of PAFs and PUFs coming to them in trust and foundations who give the ACF money, and the ACFs as an organization decides to put it into various projects and organizations. So that's another source. And then finally, AET is another organization where you can go and see various trusts and foundations making their grants available there. It's kind of like a crowded place, to be honest. There's so many of these portals. You need to know which one is the right one for you, and it may be a bit of like a trial and error until you find the right one for yourself. There's also one available on the Philanthropy Australia's website. They can also assist with that. I think there is a paid version of that. So you need to actually see which one works best for you. But the one that we have paid access to is the Grants Hub, which I'll now share and show you a bit about that. Okay, so Grants Hub, there we go. Share my screen. Yeah. Can you see my screen? Yeah, okay, great. So this is the Grants Hub. As I said, we'll provide you the the login details. Once you log in, you will see something like this. Oops, sorry. Requires me for the password. Just give me 1 second, please. I think it's good for you to see that also. So once you go there, you can see this type of thing. There are all sorts of classifications, whether it's government funding that you're looking for or non-government or in the education sector, health or blah, blah, blah. Let's go here and see all listing. As you can see on the left-hand side, there are locations and there are also areas of focus in there as well. So let's assume that you're looking for an international grant, not all. So just international. And let's say you're looking for grants that are open, that are for not-for-profit organizations. And yes, we have DGR status and all that, refine. Now, this is the list of all sorts of opportunities that you can see there. For example, let's go and see this one, Strategic Policy Grants Program. Let's click on this. This is actually a Department of Defense grant available for international projects. And when you click on it, it actually provides you a summary of that. It's open, it's by the Department of Defense, it's up to $500,000. The fourth round is current, which is from 8th of January to the 28th of February, so not a lot of time left here. And it can be both for Australia as a national a program or international, and these are the things. So you can actually then also download the PDF to provide you more information. And on this page, you can actually see as to what is this whole grant about. So that's one example. Let's go back to the main area here. There's this, let me see, Capricornian Foundation grants. Let's click on this. This is currently open, closes on the 28th of February. The foundation's purpose is to leave the world a better place than it is today, to create enduring, positive, and meaningful multi-generational change, a better world for children and their children. So, of course, this seems to be focused on children. So if you are working in the area of, let's say, environment, this may not be right for you. So this is a quick example of how you can go and search for grant opportunities. And of course, you can then apply for them. And one thing I wanted to highlight here is that if you need assistance with some of those grant sections, because at times you need to actually mention that you're part of an organization, and if your project is not an organization in its own right, you may need to be using ROCs as an organization. So we are very happy to provide the support to you as well. The theory of change document that I showed you is also part of our grant writing guide. You can make use of that document also. So that's just one quick example of how we can make use of the Grant Hub guide. I'll stop there and see if there are any new questions. Of course, we are waiting for Belinda to read that question and answer it. If there are any new questions, I'll be happy to answer them now. Otherwise, I'll show some other ones of these Grant Connect and other portals. No? Okay, let's go to other grant portals and see those. Okay, so where do we go? Just 1 second. Okay, Grant Connect. Okay, share my screen now. Again, I hope you can see my screen now. Yeah, thank you. So this is the free one that I said it's open for anyone. You do not need to have a registration or a paid subscription. It's called Grant Connect by the Australian government. And once you go there, there are all sorts of grant opportunities available. Currently, there are 142 of them. So for example, if you keep scrolling down, let's say this one that is supporting people with cancer. If you click on this, This actually tells you all about this. To who is eligible, the amount is from $40,000 to $120,000. It is for organizations that are working inside Australia, I believe. Yes, location, as you can see, here, ACT, New South Wales, Victoria, South Australia, blah, blah, blah. It's not international. And it is focused on cancer prevention and things like that. So that's one example. Of course, you can go and see all sorts of other examples as well there. First Nations grants, support at home for aged care people, critical technologies challenge program. So this is another one, as I said, all sorts of opportunities that are available. You can look for keywords. You can search by area and all sorts of searches there. The same time, there are these other ones that I would like to quickly show you. Grant application and seek funding. Okay. Here the AET one, the Australian Executor Trustees. So if you click on that, again, the link for these particular ones are provided in the grant writing guide that we'll be providing you. So for example, the Angio Family Foundation, they are supporting these types of initiatives. The Bitty Ward Foundation, the Charles Allen Foundation. You can see all sorts of foundations who have listed what type of area they support. You can go here and check for that also. Right? And then finally, let me quickly show you. I don't know. Can you see my screen still? Philanthropy Australia? Yeah, you can. Okay, good. So here, if you go to the Philanthropy Australia's website, this is, by the way, the main body, the main organization where you can go and read all sorts of reports about philanthropy in Australia. Yeah, they do all sorts of surveys from time to time. They have a lot of information on how to do fundraising and how to be successful at that. You can register for their newsletter and all that. I'd highly encourage you to register for their newsletter, because that will keep you up to date with most recent information. So let's say if you're seeking funding here, let's click on seeking funding. You go here. You can set up as a charity. Of course, that is for those organizations, those projects who want to set up as charity. But if you are seeking funding, let's click on this, and this is where it actually provides information to you, right? So the PAF guide that I was talking about earlier, that we could potentially get an updated version, that's all provided in here. So this is very important for you to be aware of, this particular website. Let's go and quickly see the PAF guide that I was talking about. So if you go here, there's a paid version. So let's see, you want to, sorry, this is not sign up today. You see, so there is a $249 a month subscription that you can actually use. We'll have an internal discussion with the execs and the board to see if there's merit in us actually becoming a subscriber as an organization, and that would mean that we'll have access to all these 3,357 active PAFs and live updates and easy to search, filter, and add favorites and training and ongoing support and things like that, right? So all of that can be provided in there with this PAF guide that is provided by Philanthropy Australia. Okay, so I think with that, I'll pause here. We'll go to answering these questions. Okay, so, okay. Belinda, do we have an answer on that?
I'm going to ring John afterwards. I think it doesn't refer to funding, refers to TST.
Okay, fantastic. So, John, Belinda will give you a call and answer that question for you in a phone call. Okay, now the next comment or question that we have here on the screen is, from Penny, who is saying that she used to describe her project as auspiced by ROX, but it hit a bump because it is ROF for TDG, which is registered. Is that still true? So again, because ROX is actually a group of organizations, there is RABS, there is ROX, there is RA or AF. They are different ones, and we're bringing in a new one also, as you may be aware, which is called RAID, the Rotary Australia Trust for Environment. So you need to be aware as to which one is the right one that you need to be applying for. So Penny, to answer your question, I don't know which exactly which was the one that you're using, but we are always happy to have a phone chat with you to help you understand which way is the right body within ROX that you can actually use for your funding. Okay. Penny, again, National Operations Manager. Okay. Jen, is Michelle still available to support us in applying grants and fundraising opportunities? Yes, so Michelle's contract has changed with ROX. He was a staff member, now he's a contractor. So his support would be available on case-by-case basis. But as I said at the very beginning of this webinar, we are committed as ROX to be providing that support from our end in the form of a fundraising manager, whether that is Michelle or someone else. But also we are committed to providing more of these webinars to equip you project managers with the right skills and resources, so you can actually do fundraising at your end also. We know that if we combine our forces together, the result would be far better than us doing it alone for you, because there are 450 projects. I mean, even if we had like 5 people working in the fundraising department, still would not be able to do justice to reaching out and doing the correct amount of fundraising for each one of your projects. Okay, so I think that brings us to the end of the presentation. Yes. Oh, sorry. Collaboration with ROX. That's the last part. Sorry. I'll go through that and then we will close for the day. There's the last part of my presentation that I had forgotten about that. Okay. So in terms of collaboration with ROX, there are multiple ways that we can support you. One of those ways is that ROX's social media has big following. So we can actually promote your projects on ROX's social media, and every time we promote it, we could actually put your project number and potentially a link for people to go and click on that. That would directly take them to the particular page on ROX's website for your project. So that's one way that we can assist you with your fundraising efforts. The other way is that we'll be facilitating introductions. This comes back to us identifying corporates or philanthropic organizations or government grant programs that we believe are a good fit for your projects. Of course, we have a good understanding of the various projects that are registered with ROX. So when we actually see an opportunity, then we'll be facilitating introduction between yourselves and those givers or those funders, if you will. That's another way that we can assist you. We can also provide feedback and provide you advice on your grant applications. We've been actually doing that quite a lot in the last 6 months of 2024. Is that right, Belinda? There were a large number of people who were coming to us, who were putting applications, and we were actually assisting them to put their application in the right way. There was one particular one, I forgot the name, that we went to with a lot back and forth.
It
was for a major foundation, a major organization in Melbourne that they were applying for.
Yeah, perpetual.
Yeah, perpetual. Yes, it was a perpetual application, and we were working with particular. Yeah, that's right. With who? Sorry. Patricia. Yeah, we were working with Patricia. Yes, yeah.
Extensive.
Yeah, it was quite an extensive one. Yes, but that's a good example of how we actually then use our resources and skills to provide support to our project managers, so they have the best chance of success with those funding applications. And of course, we are happy to work with those donors of yours who have donated, particularly if they are corporate organizations, to do stewardship of those. Because one thing we have learned from our experience here, but also other places as well, that keeping an existing donor is by far easier than bringing a new one. So doing a good stewardship job of donors is very, very important. And of course, we can distribute news about your projects to our own internal database of clubs that we have on our file. So that's that. And then again, any questions, I'd be very happy to answer them. But to reiterate, we'll be providing you 3 things. We'll be providing actually 4 things. The recording of this webinar you'll have access to. We'll also provide you with the PDF version of today's presentation. That's the second thing. The third thing is we'll provide you the Roxas fundraising guide that we have authored, and the board of Rox has approved that, which is the detailed document that will give you access to all sorts of websites because there are links available. And then the fourth thing is we'll provide you the login details to the Grants Hub. So you can use those login details to log in yourself and see all the sorts of opportunities and keep applying for them.
Mahir, can I just explain one thing for Penny?
Yeah.
Rox is a registered company, but each of the funds is separately registered for tax deductibility, and each of those funds has certain criteria. That's why when you register your project with Rox, it needs to be for that specific criteria. So if you're presenting it, if it's an overseas aid fund project, it's overseas aid fund that you have to quote. Or if it's a benevolent society project, it's RAB's criteria, and that ABN number is different, and the tax deductibility provided for that is through that number. So Rox itself doesn't have tax deductibility. Each of the funds does for those specific criteria.
Thanks, John.
I think that
I did understand it. I came to it the wrong way around because I said Rox, and then people said, "Oh, we checked, that's not registered." And then I found out. But I thought I would mention it now because other people are also providing their pitch pack, making their pitch packs, and you have to make sure you say the right one. Otherwise, people will look it up and be disappointed. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
That's a very good point, Penny. Thanks for highlighting that. Yes, we are quite a unique organization in the sense that we have 4 or 5 different kind of like entities within one group, which is often referred to as Rox. But within that, there are different organizations. If you're doing an overseas project, separate ABN, separate entity, as far as government is concerned. And if you're doing a benevolent project here in Australia, then that's again a separate entity. So you need to be aware as to which one is the right one. But I think for majority of these grant applications that you'll be able to find on a grant hub, the Grants Hub, I think they're quite straightforward. And once you put the first one, by the way, it is very easy to then replicate that and make the right edits and then submit it to another one. So please do not get satisfied that you have just submitted one application and you think that will be successful. As I gave the example of searching for jobs, you need to apply to so many different roles, right, before you get an interview. So this is exactly the same thing. But there are a few other things that are worth highlighting. Each one of your projects does great work in the field. So if you have those numbers and statistics from your project that you can actually mention it in your grant application, that makes it really, really attractive for donors. Because oftentimes when donors receive applications, they're from new organizations who are trying to start something new, right? But if you already have an existing project and there are some good runs that you have on the board, please do highlight those. Please do provide some photos. Please do make sure that you humanize it by telling the human story, right? So if you have established a school, let's say in Nepal, I keep giving this example just kind of by way of example. There are no particular school that I'm referring to, but just as an example, then you need to actually tell the story of, oh, okay, so-and-so kid who are not going to school now goes to school, and this is what she or he is able to do and all that. So when you humanize the stories, then people are very interested in that. And also you could actually make the request to donor to say, hey, you know what, if you want to actually see this project, you can come with us on a trip. We'll take you to Nepal and we'll show you this in person. Oftentimes donors actually like things like that, where they can actually experience it, see it for themselves, talk to the recipients of their support, see which children are going and how that is changing community. So therefore, you need to be really creative in how you engage the donors, right? Because you want their financial backing, you need to really make a compelling case, and you will not be the only one, because there's often a large number of applications that they'll be receiving. So what makes your application stand out? And I think the fact that you are all Rotarians, and this is kind of like within the broader Rotary family, I think that should make it also very, very attractive to people, right? Because the Rotary brand is very well known. As I said, you travel yourself, or your colleagues travel overseas to work on projects and witness those projects themselves. I think those are all sorts of things that you can mention to attract donors. I think it'd be good if we hear from people who have been very successful in this, not to, of course, give away their details of which donor they are working with, but just general guidance from people. Sue, if you hear us, Sue Neil, you've been quite successful in attracting people within your network to support, or Jan or others. It'd be good to hear from others also as to what's been working for you and what other people could learn from your experiences.
Now or?
Well, I mean, if you want to do it now, just a minute or two, that'd be helpful. Otherwise, you can share with your colleagues some other time.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's totally fine. If there's any,
I could add something. And I think you're right, Mihir, and it's very important to personalize. Humanize is the word you use. Humanize your project, and inviting those donors to visit the project, which gives them the sense of, if they can go, they can see, and they can see where their money's been spent. And and that continuing of the relationship and keeping your donors updated on your progress is really important. And send them reports, or even just an overview of what's happening.
Yes, there's a good example of one of Sue's project that I remember from an organization called Igniting Change, an Australian organization that's been managing this particular project of Sue O'Neill in collaboration with the Garza Machel Foundation in South Africa, I think it is. So what that particular organization did, Rotarians, they invited these to-be donors or donor prospects to go with them on a trip to South Africa, and I think it was Uganda, some other country as well, 2 or 3 countries. So all these people, I think there were 25 of them or 30 of them, they booked flights and they all traveled to go and see these projects in person. They were working with women to become entrepreneurs, and they were working with young women to study and things like that. So those donors who were interested, they were not donors at the very beginning, but they were interested in supporting something like that. So they went on this trip, and when they came back, a large number of them actually started donating, and not only donating for one time, they've said that they'll be donating on an ongoing basis. So that's a success story that I've seen myself with ROCS here, that when people are engaged firsthand, then they can see and they can emotionally get connected to your projects.
Yeah, the trips are a really good idea, the tours. And quite often to go on those tours, people pay or make a donation up front of an amount. But But yeah, it works really well, seeing it firsthand and having the experience.
Yeah, yes. Yes, Tim?
Here, just wanted to mention the Rorke's crowdfunding page that is available to all projects or project managers and deputy managers, and how that can be used as a fundraising tool, and the difference between the crowdfunding page and then just having a link to your traditional donation sort of function. The crowdfunding page, when you send that to someone, the link for that, it immediately gives you the visuals, a number of photos of the project, gives you a brief description. You can also upload videos onto it. You can also upload little aspects of donations and what they will buy. You know, for example, $100 will buy this, $1,000 will buy this. So in other words, it gives you a better visual of the project than what you would normally see as a donor if you just went to do a normal donation to one of our project accounts.
Yeah, that's a very, very valid point. Thanks, Tim, for raising that. But I think because we are talking about donations from institutions, if I could use that term, which is government, the philanthropic sector, and corporates, those institutions actually have giving grounds. They don't, most of them, not all of them, most of them have specific timeline that they give. And those rounds are usually twice a year, once in around March, and the other one is around July, August. So therefore, if you go to the grants hub, or we provide you the PAFs list and all that, you need to be aware as to when these donation rounds are happening, so you can get your application beforehand, right? So if the donation round is gone, there's no point in submitting anything because they are not considering anything until the next donation round. Some organizations have 2 donation rounds and some have only 1 donation round. So therefore, if you have missed the March one and that's the only one, you need to be now waiting for the next March, and that's too long to be waiting for, right? So we are now entering a new world. I know that you have been working with probably individuals, not probably with institutions. Some of you may have worked with institutions. We know that. So therefore, the way of doing this is different. The good thing with doing it with institutions is that the amount of funds, if you get it, would be larger than the individual that you've been getting, right? So therefore, it also requires larger effort, more structured effort. And by the way, today's webinar is not to kind of like give you master level of kind of like guidance on fundraising. It's just at the beginning of kind of like suggesting that these are things that are out there that you can go and explore for yourself. And if there's need, of course, we can run more specific ones, particularly on grant writing. How do you write grants? How do you actually develop a pitch, a pack? How do you explain your theory of change? Theory of change is a big thing, particularly with donors in the philanthropic sector. If you're making a pitch to them, oftentimes they want to see your theory of change to how your efforts are making an impact. What's the final goal, right? It's not about, oh, how many people you have assisted. It's okay, so you've assisted, so what? What has happened? If people have gone to school, what has happened? What difference has that made, right? It's not about numbers, it's about what impact you're creating. So we're very happy to provide more detailed training on different aspects of the grant writing aspects or the fundraising aspect. But today it's just an introduction to this.
Mahir, I don't know whether this would be of interest to the people, but we've had success in the last couple of years in getting donations matched. So a couple of local philanthropic people, instead of going to them and saying, would you donate $100,000 to this project, which, you know, they would balk at a little bit, is we went to them and said, if we can raise $100,000, would you be prepared to match that grant? And that seemed to turn their lights on. So we went out and got the 100, and then they gave 100. So we leveraged it, and I think in the end we got $400,000 or $500,000. So
that's a fantastic example. Yeah, I think that you see that those are the types of things that you need to be innovative, because the place is very crowded. And what is your value proposition? How you differentiate your project than all the other ones, right? How do you actually get through to the mind of the donor or the giver, right? So and it'd be different for different people. But your example of matching, where you have skin in the game and you actually put your efforts first and someone else then say, okay, I'll match it then. I think that's a very good example.
We had to go out and get the first.
Look, the thing is often time, because we may have not done this and we may be feeling a bit uncomfortable. Just to give you a personal story myself, when I was running another organization many years ago, I had heard of Dick Smith. I've never met the man. And you know that he had given $2 million to ROX before, right? So I had heard of him many, many years ago. I had never met him. I've never met him until this day. So, and I knew that he had a particular view on migration in Australia. In summary, what he was saying, like a family, Australia, if Australia was a family, we needed to have a family plan as to how many migrants we bring to this country and all that. So I was running another organization at the time that were working in that area of migration to get people who are, once they're in Australia, to get them jobs and things like that. So I wrote to Dick Smith out of the blue. I know that I'm not suggesting that you do cold calling and all that. I found his contact details. I wrote to him and I said what my organization was doing. And without him giving us a call or anything, he just sent the envelope with a check. And it was quite a substantial amount. He never contacted us or anything afterwards. We tried to kind of like provide updates and all that, which we did. But I mean, if you tell people, they will, that is unheard of. Well, I actually have done it myself. I'm not suggesting you do cold calling, because that was cold calling or cold writing in that particular case. But sometimes it sounds like hard. It may not be that hard. It depends on how you explain, and it depends on what's the right time that you get a donor's attention, you know?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so if there are no more questions, we'll close it now. As I said, we'll provide all those documents. If there are any questions, go on, please.
Yeah. I've noticed a couple of people from Queensland have just logged in. If you've missed the presentation, it'll be on the website. I just thought I'd make that point because I think they're an hour out.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. I think Val also makes a very good point that she's supporting a student, I believe, overseas, and she receives regular updates on this particular student's progress. That's another example of how you can keep your donors engaged. In this case, Val is a donor. She's receiving progress updates, and that will, of course, keep her engaged to keep supporting that particular student. So if you have a project that a donor is supporting, keep providing updates to them. Don't think that, oh, they have provided donation and they're gone. The more updates you provide to them, the more chances there are that they'll support again. And that goes to the donor stewardship. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Donor stewardship is important, which results in more money as well. Yeah. For fundraising package structure, or will you send them to attendees? No, we will send the fundraising pack via email. Belinda will send them to all project managers and deputies from our system. So that will be attached, and in that email, she will also provide the login detail for Grants Hub. Please keep in mind that the login details are just for your use only for ROX's projects, not outside the organization. So please keep that in mind. Okay, thanks very much for your time this morning. And as John said, there'll be a recording of this available and also the actual presentation. So please go and refer to those. If you still have any questions, we are always happy to answer questions via phone or via email or in person. Thank you. Have a lovely day. Bye for now.